Attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello and good evening. Welcome to our today's webinar with Korn & Ferry, the global leading headhunter worldwide. My name is Tanya Levine. I work in corporate relations. We are running this webinar as a joint career services and corporate relations webinar together with Korn & Ferry, and we are delighted to have the Learning Agility Leader from Korn & Ferry side here with us today, Terry Enlow, who will shortly present you a little bit more details about this exciting pilot test which we are putting at your disposition. Now, today's webinar is going to be all about how Korn & Ferry actually assesses soft skills and learning agility as well as leadership potential when they advise their clients on who to hire and which talent also to develop further and how to develop it. We know that the test which Korn & Ferry is using is at the heart of the Lominger process. Korn & Ferry bought Lominger. Terry actually comes originally from Lominger, and the Lominger process is used by over half of Fortune 500 companies to recruit and to develop talent. Now, as you may all know, corporate relations has launched a whole new service called Talent Solutions, where we actively engage with companies to source job and internship opportunities for our students and then in turn share matching talent back to the employers. So in the past 6 months, corporate relations has been able to share over 1,000 CVs of our students worldwide for job and internship opportunities. And what we hear as a feedback from the corporate employers is that many times, they wish we could tell them more, even at a group level, on what the health difference is in terms of soft skills, in terms of agility, whether it's people agility or change agility. And so we thought about offering you the opportunity to do this test, which is extensively used by Korn & Ferry, for HALT also to get a better understanding at the group level, at the MBA or EMBA cohort level, on where our students are really strong at, and also from your individual level on, where are your key strengths, raising more self-awarenesses, your opportunities, also when it comes then to career services, being able to offer you great career advisory. So HALT Career Services as well as your corporate relations team strongly encourage you to participate in this unique pilot test which we are launching right now, and to encourage also your fellow classmates to follow the link which Korn & Ferry is going to send you this week and complete it, because all of the data which you'll get from it will of course be yours, and Career Services will be looking forward to offering coaching as soon as you have done the test. Now with that, I would like to hand over to Terry Enlow. Terry Enlow from Korn & Ferry, originally Lominger, who is the agility expert at Korn & Ferry, and who has prepared a very exciting presentation for you on what is at the core of the test and why that is so important in today's job world.
Thank you, Tanya, and thank you, participants, for joining the call. Once again, my name is Terry. I am the Learning Agility Practice Lead that sits in London. I'm an American citizen, having moved to London in the last 2 years, and I support Korn & Ferry's efforts with learning agility across EMEA. So I've worked with multiple clients, and I'll provide a list of a few clients that we've done this kind of work with that are looking for some of these types of skills as we progress through the webinar. But I've done this in about 26 countries and counting. And as you know, Korn & Ferry is an executive search firm, and we use this assessment, among others, with our clients to kind of look at the soft skills, and it's role specific. And so that's one of the things we'll talk more about as we get through this content. But the goal of this session is to help you feel comfortable and encourage the participation and the efforts supported by HALT through this assessment. There is no pressure whatsoever, except that the last session that I facilitated, we had 100% participation. So I'm hoping that this session also produces that same result. So the idea, and why is it a good idea to participate? There's several reasons. One is This will provide you with good data, insights, and awareness about yourself. It's something that Holt is providing to you at no cost, along with the feedback. And these are things that companies will want to know about you. So you'll be able to have language and behavioral statements that describe your tendencies and your work preferences to others. So it'll be helpful in the interview processes that you may go through. And finally, you get quality feedback, whether that be individually or through a group session, to understand what does it all mean and what does your profile say about you. And that's going to be done by your Holt professionals. Korn Ferry has been working with them to certify them as feedback providers for the participants that participate in the assessment. So with that said, what we want to do is we're going to cover a little bit about learning agility in general. And the VIA Edge assessment measures basically the willingness and ability to learn from experience. And for some background, learning agility, if you're not familiar with the term, and I highly encourage you to go to LexisNexis or Google and certainly research this yourselves, but it comes initially from a study by the Center for Creative Leadership called The Lessons of Experience. And it's about why executives are successful and why some executives derail and are unsuccessful. So it was a blind study that was done many years ago. Additional elements that came from that study included the way in which people actually learn. So it's if you've heard the term from a development perspective, the 70-20-10 of development, what that represents is 70% is learned from the experiences you have on the job. 20% is learning from other people. So if you've had a good boss or if you've had a bad boss in the past, what did you learn from them? Maybe some formal or informal mentorships, role models, or any particular coaching you may have received. That's 20% of typically how people learn. And then 10% is the balance of that is in the classroom or formal types of training. All right, so the study really talks about, one, what does success look like and how do you learn from your experiences, as well as what do you do about that once you know and have some insights. So, why is this important? It really boils down to the fact that if you think about your own current career or others that you may know, and your current or past jobs as well, you may be in a job that you're doing more today than you were doing in the past, but your title hasn't changed or your pay hasn't changed. When people are leaving organizations today, they are less likely to replace those people, and that extra work falls on you, quite frankly. So there's what I call job creep happening in the workplace. So the jobs are getting bigger today than they used to be. Consequently, what we're seeing is that the supply of quality talent is getting smaller. And what do I mean by quality talent? I'm talking about those that can operate in what we would call a VUCA world, okay? And what we mean by VUCA is, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. It's people who can operate in that type of world today. And what organizations are looking for are people that can move from volatility to vision, move from uncertainty to understanding, move from complexity to clarity, and move from ambiguity to agility. That's what they're looking for, and that's what they're asking us to assess when we do this work. So consequently, what we're also seeing, and one of the results of this, is that younger people are getting bigger jobs faster in their careers. So we know from the search work that we do that 40-somethings are now doing jobs that 50-somethings used to do. 30-somethings are also doing jobs that 40-somethings used to do. CEOs of companies are being promoted 5 years earlier in their career than they were 7 or 8 years ago. So what's happening is there's a compressed amount of time to learn certain skills. And one of the cycles that happens is when you hire somebody into an organization, what typically happens is they get a lot of work done. They're highly action-oriented. And what do organizations typically do to people who get a lot of work done? They promote them. Well, they typically promote them to a first-level manager-type role. They don't take the time to train them on those untested skills like hiring and staffing, like delegation, like confronting their direct reports, conflict management. These are things that they just didn't teach them before they promoted, and they expected them to learn that in the job. Well, there's becomes this gap of skill, and the further you go up in the organization, the bigger that gap gets, because the skills needed become much more complex. Things like motivating others, things like dealing with ambiguity, things like building effective teams, things like perspective, which take a long time to develop, things like managing vision and purpose of the organization. So those kinds of skills become much more difficult to develop, and the skills that they grew up with that made them successful, they continue to use. Okay, so they don't really learn much from that. So what you'll see in the marketplace as you go out and look around about learning agility is we've been doing this now for over 20 years. We've been assessing it, we've been studying it, we've been researching it, but it's become this lexicon now in the business world where it differentiates talent from depth and breadth, right? We'll talk more about what that really represents. But it's becoming more and more a topic of discussion within organizations. So what we're talking about when we say the term learning agility, what we're saying is this ability and willingness to learn from experience and use that experience, that learning, those lessons that were learned in a new and different situation. At its core, it really is knowing what to do when you don't know what to do. That's really the core of learning agility. And it's being able to operate in that VUCA world that I described earlier. What you'll see within the assessment results is we're measuring 5 different components, what we would call factors of learning agility. All 5 factors are weighted equally. So you have this concept of mental agility. Describe mental agility, there are some people that you may work with that take the complex and make it more complex. That's a different type of agility. Those that are have more breadth in mental agility will be able to communicate complexity so that others understand it. They have really unique solutions to tough problems, and they're very curious about the way in which their business is operating. You have the concept of people agility, and it's not necessarily about being the most liked individual in your firm. What it means is that you can easily navigate the organization. There's some political agility there. It means you can manage up in the organization, you can manage sideways with your peer group, and you can also communicate down as well. It's this ability to manage conflict, which is in low supply in the leadership roles across organizations. You have the concept of change agility, which means that you're not satisfied with the status quo. Right? You're willing to change things because it's important and it will work better than the current state that might exist. Okay? You have results agility, which results agility can be defined not necessarily about delivering key performance indicators within an organization, but it's more about being resourceful. It's about inspiring people around you. It's about building the right kind of team. It's having some what we would call executive presence. as well. And typically, if you have a real breadth of results agility, you can pretty much be inserted into any situation that has been a no-win situation for others. Where you've had multiple people fail in a particular situation and go in there and probably solve the problem. Then you have this final component of what we call self-awareness. Self-awareness is highly correlated to Daniel Goleman's work of emotional intelligence, and it's critical to knowing who you are individually. It's having that self-insight. It's about being able to accept feedback that's provided to you and the ability to act on the feedback that you receive. It's about knowing what your strengths and weaknesses are, very obviously, and it's also about how you impact others with your behavior, right? So if you do X, how does that impact the people around you? So these are the components of learning agility that the assessment will help give you data on. Now, it's key to know that there is no right or wrong answers here. All right, what we're looking for are tendencies, because we have, so don't try to answer the questions in a way in which you think we want to hear the answers, because there's no right or wrong way. We have built in, from a psychometric perspective, social desirability indexes, so we will know if you're not, if you're self-presenting in a different way than what you actually are. That's what good psychometrics do. And there is no weight one way or the other. What we do is there are certain profiles, or what we would call patterns, of learning agility. So, you may be a unique person by having a pattern that not very many people have, or you could have a pattern that quite a few people have. So some of the patterns that we've seen over the years are things like being a thought leader or being a champion, and we have definitions around these. Being a problem solver are different kinds of profiles that might generate from the outputs of this, and your coaches will be able to help identify what those are and communicate that to you. Okay? And the way we look at this from a job perspective is when our search partners or I sit down with a client and we're trying to identify, what is it they want for this particular role, it really is going to depend on the role itself. So, for example, you may have a managing director for a fast-moving consumer goods company that is in a very established market where they're doing, where they have the majority of the market share, but they're protecting their market share. They're not going to grow 10, 20, 30% annually. That same company may have a managing director, same title, same job, but it's in an emerging market where you have to work with new governments, where you have to work with new growers for your food. You have to work with supply chains, build supply chains, or maybe local unions that you have to work with. So the job itself is the same, but it requires different skills even for the same role. So that's one of the things we work with our clients on, is what's required for the job, and then we look at what's the profile that will make that happen. Okay, so that's how we kind of look at this through those patterns. Each company is different in what they're looking for. Some people are looking for more functional expertise because they've got enough general managers. Some are looking for more general managers because they have enough functional expertise, and we can help direct them to particular candidates based on the outcomes of assessments like this. So another question that we typically get is, why would we care? So one of the reasons is that most executives derail because they're victimized by their past success. So if you're familiar with What Got You Here Won't Get You There by Marshall Goldsmith, that's what we're saying. Sometimes you have people that have 20 years of experience, and then you have people that have 21-year experiences. The difference being that if you have 21-year experiences, you haven't learned anything. You've been successful, why change? Then when you get to a point where change has to happen, you have to change the way in which you go to market. For example, if any of you are working or have worked for the financial services industries in the past 5 years, their whole world has changed. How many of those executives that grew up in the 20 years previous where nothing changed in their business would have changed, and they may not have made that change, and they don't work there anymore? They needed people that could get past this, the paradigm that was currently existing. So that's an example of that. Another reason is executives typically derail because they have blind spots, and a blind spot is very simply, I think I'm better than others think I am in a particular skill or skills. So again, the higher the self-awareness somebody has, the less blind spots they'll have. They won't be typically surprised by any feedback that they get. Another reason is that there are underdeveloped or untested skills. You remember I said earlier that as you get promoted, they're not waiting until you have those skills before you get promoted. In most cases, they're promoting you and hoping and praying that you learn those skills while you're in the new role. That typically doesn't happen, right? Some do. Some have workarounds. Some find, and can compensate for it, while others cannot. One of the key things is relationship transitions, and this is where people agility comes into play. If you get a new manager, or you get a new board, or you get a new executive, if you're a CFO and you get a new CEO, what kind of how does that relationship change the way you go to market and the way you do your business? Most derailed executives fail at these relationship transitions. Another issue that causes derailment is this ability to keep control of everything. It's mine. And you see this typically when you promote people, and this is the #1 derailer that currently exists, and this is from our research, is over-managing. And what happens is when you promote somebody that's really good at the job that they were in, who's better to do the job that they just got promoted out of than the person you promoted out of it? They don't trust people to go in and do it as well as they do. So they'll try to do their current role and the old role that they did, and they'll micromanage those people that get promoted behind them. And that can derail them very, very significantly. And finally, very simply, they just have quit learning. They just have said, everything I need to know to be successful here, and I choose not to learn any more from that. So from an assessment perspective, what we know and what we can explain to you is you're going to be receiving a link from Korn Ferry. The survey takes approximately 30 minutes. One suggestion I would make to you and to all of you who do opt in for this is take it in the full 30 minutes. Take it all at once. If you are multitasking, if you stop it and restart it, what can happen is it may impact some of those results. So we just commit to the time to do it, and do it in a session where you're not being distracted. There are 3 specific sections, and it's got all of the verification skills you would expect any kind of assessment to have. It's about 116 questions or items that you'll be asked about. And at the end of that, which for our future research, there's demographics. We know already that this has no adverse impact, whether that be geography, from a geo perspective, or from an age perspective, or from a gender perspective. But all of the data that we can capture in this is very helpful for us for ongoing research. And again, I will reiterate, we're not looking for a very specific profile. What we're looking for is you to just be candid about who you are, so we can give you language and be able to have you be able to describe yourself to others. That's really the goal of this. I'll give you a little insight. When you look at people like Da Vinci and Franklin, if you're familiar with them, of course, they were, they had a lot, they were very good at a lot of different things. They were good at inventions and writing and painting and a whole host of other kinds of, so they had a lot of breadth in the way that they went about their activities. Mozart was very deep in a very, deep expert in music. Now, they were all considered geniuses. Another person I might put in there with Da Vinci and Franklin would be somebody like Richard Branson in, today's environment. We would consider him to be in that kind of vein from a business perspective. Okay, so he has, lots of varied interests outside of, and what he's done in the past. So, just thinking about that from a depth and breadth perspective is why we want to show you that insight. So, what we hope you are able to use this for is for your own internal reflection, how to position yourself with future employers, either internally inside your own organization if you're not looking to leave, and or externally where you have a way of differentiating yourself from other candidates that might be in the process for that particular job. Looking at it from a career path, the coaches will help you understand what your profile looks like and how that, what your career goals are and what kinds of things you might want to look at, either do more of, do less of, stop doing, start doing. That's all part of the career pathing and development components of this assessment that's being provided to you. So what I will do is I will end there and open this up in the chat room for any specific questions that you as participants might have that Tanya and I can answer for you.
Right, thank you, Terry, very much for this very insightful and interesting presentation from your side. As we have communicated in the chat forum of that web webinar, thank you for posting any questions which you may have in the chat forum to the right of the webinar. Now, I will start by reading out aloud some of the first questions that have been shared with us. Any further questions, please do not hesitate to type them in. We will try to answer all of them. So one of the questions was, can I put these results of the test in my CV? So I will start answering that from a career services and corporate relations perspective. Yes, you can. So you will get a score of your overall learning agility, whether you are high depth, high potential, and then for the people agility, in which areas you may be really strong, as well as change agility, and the other concepts that Terry presented. So you will have that data, and that data is yours, and you can include this data in your CV. Of course, your career services team is ready to coach you on how to best translate this into your CV to make it specific versus too generic. And all of our career services here in London have gone through the Korn Ferry certification training for this test, so they will be experts to advise you on how to best position you for that. Now, we also had another question there which said, will this test help me with my career choices? So the VIA Edge test in general gives you an indication on the type of roles and environments that will suit you best, which will leverage your strengths best. But then, of course, I mean, it will not give you just a list of potential careers. It's more in which environments will you really thrive and will you use your strengths to the best. I think it would be great if Terry can also provide some perspective here from his side. Also, it seems you've been doing a major project with one of the leading banks here in the UK, where you use a certain mix of different profiles also in their recruitment strategies. So Terry, it would be great if you could also answer that question from your side.
Sure, and I think it's probably appropriate time to let you know what some of the, what types of clients we're doing work with relative to this. And we're talking about large global multinationals, companies like Pfizer, companies like Alcatel-Lucent, companies like Vodafone, across all, FMCG companies like Mars and Kraft are key examples of that. Companies like Rickett Benckiser in that same space. we did some work recently with Lloyd's Bank, and to Tanya's request, what we did with them is we worked with their top 170 leaders across all of their business units, and we were doing an assessment of what is their they were asked by the FSA to understand what does our bench strength look like. That was one of the requirements that Lloyd's had. And so we were able to win this work because we were able to go back to them and say, look, here is what your top talent looks like. And we were able to do, from a perspective of that, we were able to look at where are the gaps, based on their overall future strategy. Where did they have too much and where didn't they have enough, so they could either look at a build or a buy strategy within the organization. So in one of the outputs of that, what we learned was that they had a great deal of people that could probably grow to large general management or kinds of roles, but they didn't have enough functional experts to lead the business. So that was one of the outputs of this. So when they are going out looking for future talent, they're looking for a different profile than what they thought they would have to go look for. So that's one of the advantages that when we work with organizations, we can do an organizational assessment and help them kind of outline, here's where your opportunities are to fill in gaps from a talent perspective.
So we have another question from the audience which has come in, which is, do you advise to run the test regularly during your career?
Yeah, so we did, this came up again, and that's a great question. What we recommend is no sooner than 2 years, every 2 years if you were going to do this, because it takes time to, if you're going to make and move your profile from one profile to another, because you have to be able to reflect on your experience, reflect on the learning from those experiences, and have the opportunity to test out those learnings on new and different situations. It takes time to do that. So our recommendation is if you do it again in the future, you should do it in 2 years, not less typically.
Right. Then we also had a question in what sort of feedback will I get and how will this process work? So what you will get is this week you will get a link sent to you to your email from the Korn Ferry Service Center, giving you a unique access passcode to the Via Edge Learning Agility test. As Terry explained before, the test has around 116 questions. It will take you between 20 to 30 minutes. Then once you have completed that test, we will at one point from Korn Ferry get the green light to give you both your individual reports as well as your coaching reports should you wish to schedule a coaching session with your career service advisor. So Paula Quinton-Jones will be the perfect contact as soon as you have done that test. At the same time, HALT will also get a group report, so at group level, where we will look now at a group level to understand how is the cohort doing in terms of different agility scores, to also leverage that then obviously when we students to our employers. Now it is very important that for you to know that the data of this test is data which belongs to you, so you in the end have the choice whether individually for your CVs you want to include some of the learnings that you have in the test, which will be like a soft skills certification or guidance on where you're really strong, and again your career services team will be able to consult you on how to best include that in the skills section of your CV, as well as for general career guidance. Now Paula has sent you all a mail from the Corporate Relations and Career Service team inciting all of you who have not yet uploaded your CV to please upload them to the portal. Password is HALT student unless you have changed it. It's not a platform which is supported by mobile device or iPad, so you will have to use a regular computer to log in. So ideally, if you want to be also included in the talent solution services of corporate relations, please also make sure that you do have a CV in the system, so if we come across a great job opportunity, you can always opt in if you like that job opportunity and if we do shortlist you. Now, what is important is that the Korn Ferry Soft Skills Agility Test is not a test which is mandatory in a way that you have to upload your CV in order to being able to take it. So you will get the access and the free link to the Korn Ferry test no matter what. However, should you wish to see for how many job opportunities we could shortlist you now pending your profile, then please do upload the CV in the portal, because unless the CV is in the portal, the many job opportunities now that we raise worldwide, we cannot put them forward for you to decide whether you want to opt in them or not. Okay. With that, I don't know, Terry, if you would still have one last final message to our audience.
Yeah, I mean, all I would say is you know, when we, and I applaud Hult for doing this, and we have other business schools across the U.S. as well that are doing this with their students. You know, it really is, I mean, it's a no-lose opportunity for you. One is you're getting very good career information and feedback. You're getting good information to share with others about you specifically. You know, if you were to be in the open market and not in this type of program, it would be a very costly assessment and feedback session for you. So I think that what Hult is doing is investing in you, and we also, you know, want you to get the most out of it. So my recommendation is to take the assessment, enjoy the output of it, and take the opportunity to learn a little bit about yourself. And that's what I will leave you with.
Thank you, Terry. Very well said. Indeed, we want to invest in the talent and into the global student talent which we have at Hult. So we do hope that you all have the opportunity to take the test. Again, the links will be sent this week. Any further questions, please do not hesitate to contact either Paula Quinton-Jones from Career Services or myself, Tanya Levin from Corporate Relations. And we look forward to your feedback from this very exciting pilot. Thank you, and thank you all for attending this webinar. Goodbye.